Hello all and welcome to another ZoidRush video. We're back with another video that I found more important, so my other videos are delayed. It has to do with the recent open letter that the OGN casters Monte Cristo, DOA, and Papa Smithy wrote to Riot and just kind of its fans about not attending MSI. Um, First, I would like to state that when talking about Riot issues and talking about things, it takes a lot of power, a lot of the community to kind of raise hell and kind of give them shit to fix whatever needs to be fixed because you want to see something happen, you want to see these people, and I think this is a very important topic that we need to discuss. I think it gets brushed under the table. It got brushed under the table a while back because this has been going on for quite some time, and I'll go into that in a little bit. And then it's getting kind of brushed over the table. I mean, it got to the front page of Reddit, and then it's just kind of brushed under the table. And people are like, oh, it's just a caster, no big deal. I still get to see my teams at MSI, right? So let's start back a while back. It starts with player salaries. This is where I think this is all begins, and it's been building up since then. You can really talk about when players were getting signed to teams. You could talk about Seven Sirenskin. I can't even say his name. I apologize. Ugh. But getting signed on to TSM as a jungler, he was like top paid, and he was getting competition with another team, and finally TSM outbid them, and he was not really clear, and then he was just trying to be greedy, and blah blah blah, right? So you never really heard how much he was getting paid, right? So that was the big thing, and that was a big controversial topic, and Reggie chirped on it, and then the other team chirped on it, and then fishy stuff, right? Whatever the case may be, he ends up on TSM, right? So, down the line, a little bit later, a challenger team, Ember, comes along and says, hey, we released all our player salaries, right? And people lost their mind. They were like, whoa, what's going on here? Or, wow, that's not a lot. Or, holy shit, what is this, right? And it just got twisted and turned at that point. The community took hold of it. Thorn made a video about it, which I do recommend you guys watch. He makes a good point about how it's not about the organizations, it's not about the little orgs or big orgs, about how much they make or how much income they're getting. It's about player rights, and that was what's important. I think it got a wishy-washed under the table. I mean, a few players chirped in on it, professional players, of course, chirped in on this, and it just seemed to kind of get brushed under the table. It seems like little organizations were taking a spin on it, be like, oh, the big orgs, we can't spend as much as big orgs, and then you had the big organizations going, well, we don't want to share all this information, and of course, we can make more than them, and we don't want that pressure, that pressure to give more to the player because, right now it's at a good place, right? So it really came down to really player rights, but people kind of twisted and turned that and used that for their own ordeals, like I said, and it kind of got brushed on the table. Now, it kept getting growing to this point where it leads up to this open letter that I wrote, which I'll read in a little bit. But it comes down to next to Travis. Travis made a long video, and I'm not just saying it's about economics or money because that's not what the case is. But Travis made this long video, or not super long, but long video enough to say that Riot doesn't recognize its players for what they're worth. That they don't see players for what they're worth. And this is when the topic gets kind of tricky. It is also talking about money in some aspect because if you take it for player worth, if we use that in a different sense, if we're looking at players like such as Michael Jordan or Kobe or LeBron James, for example, and we can say, wow, these players are worth 20 plus million. Just saying that, right? Well, they built up that wealth, they built up that worth, and that is something they built over time. Of course, that will average on how they play and how good they do and how many points they scored and how many championships they have, all that shit, right? Now, you can't do that with players because it's kind of like, oh, it's esports and things work differently here. And the players, you don't really know how much they made or how much they're making. And it goes back to Thorne's video again. So much of this could stop poaching, this could stop player rights, a better payment, make more than minimum wage, if not at least make minimum wage, because some players don't even make minimum wage. Maybe get an agent, somebody to help them out, kind of discuss things, because this is a lot of mumbo jumbo, contract stuff. You don't really know what you're signing. You sign away, and you're like, I'm working 10 plus hours a day through video games. Yeah, it's something I enjoy and like. It's burning me out, and I'm only making $10,000 salary, right? I know that's super low. It's just a number, though. So Travis makes this video, and I think that's really important. And I also recommend that you watch that. Like I said, it's just not about economics, but that also plays a role. Then future down the line, Monte Cristo, who's a caster for OGN, of course, he's made a lot of tweets. He's been very active and very loud about this, in my opinion, on Twitter. In January, so about a few months later, or a month or two later, whatever you want to time span, he says, in spite, and this will pop up on the screen here, in spite of the huge audience for LOL, Riot does not have contracts that resemble their peers in traditional sports. OGN casters are the only LOL casters that have freedom to traditionally allocated to talent in the sports industry. I think it's best for esports talent to be freelanced and contracted to broadcasters. That way casters have agents and get better deals. Fun fact, LOL is the only major esport where talent are employees of the developer. Now, what he means by that is when you're looking for a job, or when you go for a job, it's on like online. You can go to monster.com or wherever, Indeed, and you go there, you look up a job, and it's there. You apply for it. That's the job. That's how much you get paid. And Riot kind of works the same way, like that. You can look this up on Riot thing, and just be like, oh, I want to be a professional player, and I'm like an employee there, right? And same thing works for the casters and the crew and everybody in esports. Whereas other things, which is mentioned in the MSI, it's more freelance. It's more just kind of like you're on a contract, and depending on how much work you do for that specific project, is how much you get paid for. So it's not a set base all the time. It's not like, oh, you're hired here as an employee making 10 bucks an hour. No, you are, for this project, you could be making like 40 bucks an hour. For this project because it's a little bit smaller. We'll only give you like 25 bucks an hour. Just an example, right? Is what he means. So he's been on this, and he's been doing a lot of research for this, and then it leads up to this, which was released yesterday. The next is released from the OGN casters. That Monte Cristo, DOA, and Papa Smithy will not be attending the MSI, which is the mid-seasonal invitational of Riot Games, right? So I want to highlight some of the main points here. So they mentioned a bunch of other games: Counter-Strike, Dota 2, StarCraft 2, Halo, and Hearthstone. And they were surprised, and I'll just read this word for word. We were surprised to discover from our peers that Riot offers to us approximately 40% to 70% of the rate received by talent for major events in all these titles. Now, for example, say a job's worth 100 bucks. Say StarCraft 2 is giving you 100 bucks, right? Well, Riot will only give you 70 bucks for that, all the way down to $40, just to make it even clear numbers. That's insane for something the equivalent work or something to the same level. And that could, vary, of course, from, each event and each thing they cast, right? So, because they are the only freelancers there, because they work in Korea, they said, since we are freelancers and not Riot employees, we rely on these contracts for our income and feel that we would damage our careers in the long term by accepting below market rates. Furthermore, by agreeing to significant lower wage, we fear that we may contribute to the regression of standards for freelance casters in the industry as a whole. So, once again, it kind of goes back to what he tweeted about a month ago, or actually 2 months ago now, in January, about how LOL is the only one that works you as an employee, and that's only in NA. You have to keep in mind. Monte Cristo, of course, is a freelancer because he works in Korea, and the rules are different, and just how they work everything is differently, right? But this is important because we need to bring up a topic again, and that is player salaries. Why is this so important? Because it's relevant right now, and it should be continuously talked about, because this only made it the front page of Reddit kind of blown up. They're like, oh, we understand. You need your money. You need to survive. Some people are like, oh, you're being greedy. This is why you expect so much from Riot. And it's not really being greedy. This is something that needs to be discussed a long time ago, in my opinion. I think this has been a boiling point for a lot of people, and it seems that as esports gets more and more popular, it seems that they have more of a obligation, you could say, a more of a, they're getting more and more pressure from people to just kind of how everything works, how esports is a functioning business here as Riot Games. Now, Riot Games, of course, one second, I apologize. Riot Games is, of course, not just the face of esports. There's many other games as included earlier, Counter-Strike, Dota, StarCraft, Halo, and Hearthstone. These are all their businesses that are paying and working as esports too and growing esports. But it's something that I think is going to have more and more pressure, just not in Riot, but as in the games I mentioned. And it's important for player rights, and I think this is a perfect time to bring it up again. I know it's right at the end of the season, and I think why not? Why can't we relook at these contracts? Why can't we start releasing numbers now? We've seen a league played a couple times in NA, especially players that have been in for the last three splits. You can take Balls, who's gotten picked on from time to time again. Diamond 2 top laner there. Oh, he's not doing really good. Diamond 2, right? And somebody just posted the other day, actually, of the damage between Fiora's team, who he was playing Fiora. It was like this small line compared to everybody else's on Cloud9, yet they still won, right? So I think this is really important. I think this is, once again, it goes to your player rights, just having more say and kind of having a base median. I mean, that works for any job here in the United States, of course. You have kind of a base idea of what people make. And then two, it gives them a better playing advantage, better playing field. It stops them from being poached as much, because what people do when it comes to poaching, it's like, oh, they talk to you, and then of course if you're frustrated with the team, or you just don't get along with somebody, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I make this much, just when you're discussing, all they have to do is raise it a little bit more, and you still could be getting undercut when you're getting poached. And last but not least, this could give the opportunity to players, and I guess the casters even, an agent where they could discuss contracts and how much they'll make and how much they're worth, and kind of put a value on these professional players. And I guess the big thing about this, and the big thing that really frustrates me, is that a while back, Riot would praise that it would take care of its employees, it takes care of its players, takes care of everybody. And I'm not saying they don't. I'm not saying that they treat them like shit. I'm not saying that at all. But they did praise on that. They're like, oh, you can make so much money on esports, and they kind of skewed that idea. They're like, oh, look at Ocelot. Ocelot was a streamer, and he made $1 million. That is possible here in League of Legends. And they kind of gloated on that. And there's videos back in the day when Skara and Travis were having an interview, and they were having ice cream. I remember this interview, and they were eating ice cream, I'm pretty sure, and they were talking about how Nick Allen was, he promised to take care of his players. He promised that, there would be no issues, there would be money, and you can live freely and be okay. And I don't think that's the case, especially with people who are inside the esports. I know the community only gets a small clip of it, and I only get a small clip of what the players would like to release, or what we hear from other sources, such as like other gaming networks that write on esports. Um, I just think it's really important. This would be prime time to bring this up, and something to kind of be on the table, not just for the community's aspect, but for the players' aspect. And that's what people need to get away from. It's not about, oh, we want to see how much they make, or we want to fight for how much they make, right? Or we'll keep people accountable. Yes, but it's more for the players. It's for players, making the money and the minimum wage that they need to make to live, because you're living under the poverty line when you're making less than minimum wage, and you're playing and working 10, 12 hours a day playing video games, doing what you love, but at the same time burning yourself out. Is it really worth it? And also, once again, it stops, like I said, poaching, and it stops. It gives them a voice. It gives them an agent that can say, "Hey, look at here. These other teams are making this much for the same kind of position." And it's not a bad thing. People think this is a bad thing. I think this is a perfect time to raise hell, talk about it, and not let it go. Monte Cristo, DOA, and Papa Smithy, I hope to see you in the future. I hope this does not affect um, Worlds. I really think this is going to be a constant issue until Riot breaks down, or Riot comes up with a solution to kind of pay people. And just not, like I said, it's not too much about the caster itself, it's more about the player rights. But then, once again, as a whole, it seems that this is not going away, and it's just steamrolling, guys. It's steamrolling, and I really hope that we talk about it and keep it up on the front page, keep talking about it until Riot kind of gives like a set of standard or implies something that they want to see from the orgs, at least kind of how much a player makes or how much a general player makes would be great. Anyway, that's it. I thought this was a really important topic, and I just saw it. I just saw it happening as it grows, and that's the best part about it, is that you can see it, and that's the best. I guess the best part about the internet is you can go back, you can see when it all started. Like I said, it started all the way back when player salaries kind of brushed it under the table, to Travis's video about the player's wealth and worth, to Monte Cristo making its very aggressive tweets and stating how Riot works and how things are working in Riot, if you agree with them or not, to them now declining MSI. And Papa Smithy, or not Papa Smithy, but I know for a fact Monte and DOA are two favorable casters that people like to see. So this is just one of the little blows I think we'll see in the future. That is it. And I will see you guys next time. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you really want to see more of my content, make sure you subscribe.